Hey, I'm back talking about building better futures. All right. And so I figured since I'm already here in this environment, I have this energy, it's gaining because this is my third take on this thing. I want to go ahead and hit you with that first episode of my Building Better Futures series. Go check it out on Notion or Substack if you want to check out more. Um, Okay, so I have 3 minutes and I'm gonna try to do this short. If I don't, it is what it is. I'm stopping here. So I want to start with this idea of utopian cities, right? Because I believe since so many of us live in cities, we have to figure out how to make cities better, right? We can't just abandon all cities in order to create a better world. We have to figure out how to solve the problems that we already have, right? And I believe cities can be made sustainably, but a big way to do that is we have to be more conscious about how we interact with the environment around us, right? And so the first version of that is what I call micro cities and macro cities, right? Where micro cities is that we need to make cities smaller, right? We need to cut them up such that every city, instead of every city being this amorphous blob, with hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people in it, you instead cut it up into all this individual neighborhoods and towns and counties and all this other stuff within the cities, right? And they federate up, to larger and larger levels of scale. But at each level, right, the smallest increment of a city has to be self-sufficient, right? And what that means is that instead of depending on some people out on basically importing all of your resources from somewhere else, we have to learn to produce our resources internally in each part of the city. That means your food, your energy, your manufacturing needs, right, medicine, any other needs that people need. Whatever can be produced in that area has to be produced there. And anything that you cannot produce, then you figure out trade agreements with people, beyond, right? And so I think what that looks like is utilizing all these amazing technologies, but also indigenous knowledge that we have, such as everything from food forests to vertical farming, from aquaponics to aeroponics to, you know, um, any all these sorts of things, indoor, outdoor, greenhouses, everything that we can figure out, right, in order to produce the food that we need. And same thing for all the other areas. um Again, there's so much to talk about this. Go check out the full article for more. But I want to leave off with this idea that in a utopian city, it won't be perfect, but it will be better, right? Because in that world, you will be able to do amazing things like focus on, how can you serve your community by creating really cool technologies or really cool art or really cool stories and everything like that that inspires people to do more, right? So some problems that people will face there is the biggest thing I see people thinking about is basically creating formulas for what makes this city, what scale can this city operate on. And that formula will basically encompass all of the environmental concerns. So for instance, this is the part being in nature. I got stuff crawling on me. But essentially, you have to think about, okay, how much stuff can grow in this area, and how can we not just grow as in agricultural, like industrial farming, but for instance, in like this area here, you know, what can grow in this area naturally? Like what's the indigenous stuff that can grow in this area that is still edible to us, and how can we create an ecosystem around it. So instead of me cutting down all these trees and draining all this stuff in order to plant one crop, instead, how can I create a diverse ecosystem of crops, of things that I can eat, but also things that the local environment can feed off as well, right? And then if I want to build something here, right, like a little, like to process the food, like this path over here is pretty empty right here. Maybe I can make a little stand in order to, produce that food. Maybe I can in that corner over there, right? Maybe I can make a little smoke shop, right? And so this is what I mean. Like we have to be, instead of thinking about us in combat with nature, or trying to conquer nature and pave over everything to do only what we want, is like how can we think about living more in tune with the environment around us, right? And that's the foundational idea around this idea around micro cities, is how can we shrink down the scale in which the city operates. Now physically the city can be as big as whatever, right? Like, for instance, I live in Atlanta. I'm not saying that we should, cut off the rest of all these counties. I'm saying, like, in each part of Atlanta, for instance, take your city, as you need to. In each part of the city, every community within the city is empowered to make these choices, right? Like, if I live in East Point versus if I live in College Park, if I live in, not even like the counties, it could even be a couple streets, it can even be a neighborhood, right? Like my neighborhood right here, right? I can come together with the people in my neighborhood to figure out, okay, how many people live in this neighborhood? What are the things that we need to eat? Right? What's the energy needs? What's the medicine needs? What's the whatever, right? In this specific neighborhood, and then what around us, can we utilize to do that, right? How can we use this amazing land that we have around here, to produce the food that we need together, right? And then, out of these houses and stuff like that that's already built out, which of them can we turn into a little fab lab, right? What can we turn into a little a warehouse, or to stock, resources as we, save them up and stuff like that, right? It's not, and it's, I think it's so important for us to realize that we can essentially shrink down the scale at which we live in our cities, while at the same time, still being able to benefit from living in these like denser areas, right? And then finally, what I want to leave off on is how can we get there, right? I think it's kind of clear based on what I was saying, but I think in order to get there, we start by, being able to talk with our community more and learning a lot more about how to produce food, how to manufacture things, how to craft things, how to, do decision making together and stuff like that, right? Where we don't need to be depending on the government in order to solve our problems. We don't need to be depending on corporations to provide our resources, our tools and things like that. We should be thinking about how can we do this together, as everyday people, right? And that's the simple thing, right? It can be that simple. Not really. It's gonna be hard, but I think it's worth it, right? I think that's the type of difficulties, that's the type of problems that I rather think about than having to worry about, oh, I'm not gonna, lose my house because I can't pay the bills, right? Like, what if instead of worrying about paying the bills, we could just produce our own electricity and clean our own waters and everything like that, and at the same time, if we do need resources outside of what we can produce, outside of what we can, find locally, then we can go out and say, oh, how can we, facilitate this trade? How can we, do all these things? And that's where, we can reintroduce, other things. It's really just about how to be more imaginative about, the cities that we live in. And that's the simple of it. I got a lot more planned, but we'll leave it there. This is already over 8 minutes, so I'm gonna have to either edit this down. Maybe I'll just post the whole thing on my on the channel and just worry about the shorts later. I don't know. I'll figure it out. But I'm glad I did this. Let me know what you think in the comments, and let's do this thing. Let's create a better future together. All right. See ya. Bye bye.